was giving birth to my children, like self-doubt and fear has been all the way. How I got over it, I guess, I did two things. I do, because I still get scared and I still doubt myself. One of them is sitting with myself and analyzing, okay, where's this coming from, right? Why? Why am I feeling this way? Once I get to that, it's what I need. Do I need to sit more with myself and remind myself of all the great things that I've accomplished, of how a lot of people have always said that I wouldn't do or amount to anything or whatever it is that they wanted? Or do I sit in everything that I've done, every single thing? And for me, it's kind of counting each blessing that I had, right? And that takes me away from the fear. The other part is when the fear is really, really big, the doubt is really big, I lean into my kitchen table people, right? I go and just sit with them and talk with them, and some of them look kind of emotionally slapping. And Dr. Jones is one of those. And then usually we go back to centering myself on, look, you do what you do the best that you can, you do it with your whole heart, you enjoy the process, right? Because for me, joy in everything that I've done is really important. I look at myself and do what my mom taught me to do, is laugh about myself. Like, come on, Gabriela, really? Are you kidding me? And once I get the laughter about how ridiculous and absurd I'm being about this situation, that immediately helps me pull through. Like, yeah, okay, I'm done with it. Let's go, right? So I think it's, for my process of life, what has helped me a lot is to understand that we don't become great warriors by just doing things without fear. It's learning to do things even with fear that makes you a great warrior in life. So just kind of coming to that realization that I'm not getting rid of this. I mean, I'm living, and life is full of stuff that will make me doubt myself or fear whatever it is that's coming in. But I don't care. I mean, I'm here. I'm going to have to do it anyways, right? So let's do it the best we can. And so, and of course, having somebody in your kitchen table is always so important, because we can't see ourselves all the time. I wish we could. But when we can't, then we lean on wonderful people or elders or people that we love and trust that can kind of give us that support that we need to move forward.
Wow. Oh, I'm going to follow that. So what's really cool, I think, about this panel is that you have different generations and different perspectives. These are very mature answers. Like I never thought about the difference between imposter syndrome and insecurity or, doubt. When I saw the question, I deal with imposter syndrome almost every day, especially as a business owner. It's so funny because I just talked with someone earlier today, and he was asking me to do this pretty big project. And, after I hear you ladies speak about it, yes, that's probably more self-doubt than imposter syndrome, but I felt like, well, I'm not the right person to do that. Like, who am I? I asked myself, like, who am I in this? Or how did I always ask myself, how did I get myself into these things? But, kind of what Gabby said is really, for me, I do go through that. And whether it's imposter syndrome or self-doubt or both, I do have to sit in, and sometimes I have to write a list of all the things I've accomplished. Like, okay, I can do this. I've done the same thing here, and here. And I have to prove to myself and kind of refortify myself. And also to what Dr. Jones said is whose opinion matters in the situation. So this guy came to me. He didn't go to other people. He asked me to do the work because he knows my work. And so whose opinion matters. And a lot of the times my own opinion of myself is lower than other people's opinions of me. And so having that cheerleader, I call her and I'm like, hey Rima, like, I just need a cheerleader right now. And she's like, oh, you're great, you're this, you're that, you know? And so it took me a while to be able to reach out and actually ask for help. You know, honestly, I've sat and ruminated in these things to a point where I've almost canceled some client work because of that fear and doubt in myself. So really having that support system is really, really important. And looking at the situation, like whose opinion matters. And for me, a journey is in self-love and self-worth. You know, I am worthy of these things. That doesn't come natural, you know, for stuff I've gone through, and a lot of humans, you know, especially in our society where production equals worth, success equals worth, money equals worth. We're changing the definition of worth and accepting that we are worthy the minute we are born, you know, as the humans we are. But as women, you know, especially in the working world, we've had to prove our worth. We've had to work harder than men to show that we can get equal pay or even, you know, pay. So yeah, I think it's definitely a journey, and I hope to get to a confident point where I, you know, see it as more self-doubt and find that courage to push through, which I still do. It just feels very painful and scary, and sometimes in my bed crying until the minute I have to meet a client. And then I put on a face and here we go. So it's a journey. It's not just one day you wake up and you're like, okay, I got this. I don't feel imposter syndrome or self-doubt. Like Gabriela said, is you feel all your life. It's just working through that is what makes the difference.
Thank you for sharing. And you know, I something that resonates that when you pointed out that value is kind of given based on like money. And you know, now I feel like the relationships with people are transactional. So when you find someone that you think is very valuable, take care of that person and hold on to them for your support group, because relationships that aren't just transactional are very hard to come by in life, very hard to find, and very hard to keep in your life for a very long time. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, everyone. For the next question, what are 3 boundaries that are non-negotiable boundaries that help you stay grounded in your work, in your life, in education, and just whether they're small or big, what are 3 boundaries that help you just stay at peace?
I wrote these down so I wouldn't forget them. Okay. So for me, the first one is no bad energy in my home. My home, for me, has to be a peaceful, quiet place, and it is. I love it. But that means that if I don't like you, you're not coming to my house. I mean, that's it. And that sense that if you come in my house, that means you're going to leave some of your energy behind. And if your energy isn't positive and uplifting, I don't want you leaving that crap behind. So no bad energy in my house. That's number 1. Number 2, know how and when to say no and stick to it. Don't let people guilt trip you into doing something you don't want to do. It took me a while I always had no in my head, but no didn't come out of my mouth. Now no comes out of my mouth. I mean, there are many things I say yes to because I enjoy them. I want to do them. I'm still, you know, involved in the community and doing things now. I'm doing clinical supervision, and that's really cool. I love it. But there are some times where I think, I don't want to do that. And so, well, Teresa, no. I don't have the time. I don't want to. Thank you for asking. I appreciate the vote of confidence, but no. So learn how to say no, and when you feel confident in that no, stick to it. People can figure stuff out if you're not there. Just trust me on that. And the last one is quality over quantity in friendships. I have a very good, very tight, very small circle of wonderful people. And I don't need 69 friends. I don't. I have 5, 7 that are really good, some of the best people I've ever met in my life. So make sure that the people that you have around you are quality people, and don't worry so much about how many you have.
2 weeks that I did get it. And there are 3 things that are non-negotiable with me. 1, I don't work with people that don't have integrity. I don't care if whatever, my integrity is not for sale, so I don't work with people that would want to buy it. And that's non-negotiable whatsoever. Every single thing that I've accomplished in life, this is the boundary. And everybody knows me because of that I'm not no nonsense in that sense. If that's a word. Because I do think that once you sell out, the next thing is easier and easier, and you lose our path. And once you lose your path, you lose yourself. And so I'm not interested in losing myself. It took me 50 years of my life to get myself where I am, and I'm not losing it. So that's non-negotiable. The other one, I don't hang around or befriend women that bring down other women. That is a super tight-knit rule I have. If I sit down at a table and when somebody gets up, she's part of the conversation, that's a table I will not be sitting on, speaking on, or supporting in any way. Because I've always been really observant of how we have all this stuff against us constantly. We have to prove ourselves, and we don't need to do that within ourselves. And so for me, that's one. And I really surround, like Dr. Jones said, with women that only are for women. And that's where my power, I draw my power from it. That I know that when I'm sitting down with coffee with you, I'm gonna get up inspired, feeling wonderful, feeling that I can do things instead of feeling insecure, right? And so I don't hang with people like that, especially women. It's a no boundary. And the other one that I would definitely center as part of my growth is I don't do anything that I don't enjoy and feel pleasure in doing. I learned when I was young that when you put yourself through stuff and you do things that you don't want to do, you work with people that you don't want to work, you do yourself because you have to instead of you want to, then it's going to be awful, right? You're going to end up that experience not giving yourself your 100%. You always know, we always know, that's a no-no because in the end, this is going to end up creating this situation in my life. And when we go against that intuition, I think the worst experience has been coming from not listening to my intuition. So if I'm not enjoying it, if I'm not gonna laugh within it, that doesn't mean that it won't stress me, it won't concern me, no, but there has to be a joyful part where I sit down and laugh with people, make connections, try to laugh about the ridiculous within the bad situations. I was trying to find that absurd to laugh about it, right? And so that would be my 3rd boundary. I'd never do anything, and if I get into something that I thought I was gonna enjoy in the middle of the road, I find out this created more drama for me, then I'll set it aside and I'll keep moving. So I really think life is short, and that I always tell people is when I'm dying, I don't want to say, oh, I should have want that hour that I went to that horrible meeting and I wasted my time there, right? I want to be able to say, you know what, I enjoyed the heck out of this life, whatever it was, right? So that's my 3 boundaries.
Yeah, so for me, number 1 boundary is I take an hour every morning before I do anything. So I go right from my bed, whether or not I gotta go to the bathroom first or not, but I go right to my meditation cushion, and I just sit with myself. And sometimes it's an actual meditation, sometimes it's just sitting with myself, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 15 minutes, but it's the first thing I do. I don't look at my phone for an entire hour from when I've woken up, besides turning off my alarm. And within that hour, I have a pretty good routine of some sort of movement. So I do yoga or I go for a run, and most of the time these aren't long, you know, it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. You know, sometimes people think like we have to do these like crazy things and like an hour-long meditation and an hour-long work. Like, who's got time for that? Nobody. And so, you know, and within that hour, I play with my dog. We dance to one song every day. I pick a fun song to start the day off. And me and my dog have a little dance party with her little toy. Then I get my coffee and I kind of just sit with that. And so within that hour, I'm just 100% with myself. And that has changed my life over the last 2 years. My dad was a rageaholic, so anger is the first emotion I pretty much ever experienced most of my life, to the point of even dropping a pen on the ground and a blow up. And I am a complete 180 from that. And in fact, today I drove all the way to Tacoma to be at a meeting at 7 a.m. I got up at 4:30, and they changed the meeting location without telling me. And so typically, you know, I'm sitting there till 7:30, like texting, like, what is happening? Typically I would freak out. I would just flip out, I would piss, and all this, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see if I can move my schedule around and do some other things instead. And so I think really taking that time for myself in the morning has just changed the trajectory of my day, and I'm able to manage the ups and downs a lot better. So that's a huge boundary. The second boundary I have is around my work schedule. I was also in school studying for a while, so I had a study schedule. And I just have days where I don't do meetings. So Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I call it people, so I don't see people, because I'm an introverted extrovert. So I love people and I love people, but then I need a lot of recharging time, especially with my work. I need a lot of focus time. So I've set a really hard boundaries on my schedule and work, whether it's work meeting or this kind of stuff, or meeting someone for coffee. Those are only done on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm pretty strict with that. There are very special occasions where I'll do some stuff on Fridays. So kind of going back to Dr. Jones, where she's like, learn to say no. I was a perpetual yeser, to the point where I got so burnt out, it was really, really bad. And so I had to work to say no. It's really hard. You hear it in your head, like, I don't want to do this, but yes comes out of your mouth. So I learned my first step was to say maybe. So that was a little pause, maybe, and then I'll think about it. Like, let me think about it. And so that was my bridge to saying no, to being able to take the space to understand, like, okay, I actually don't want to do that. Because I like to do a lot of things, you know, and then kind of, I would find myself in situations where Gabriela said, like, halfway through it, I'm like, oh, I actually didn't really want to do this, because I didn't take the time in the beginning to think about it. So that was huge for me. And then my third boundary is I don't do stuff on Sundays. Sundays are my day where I kind of get my stuff together for the week. I read, I do stuff. So I'm pretty strict about that as well, because it sets my week up for my boundaries and for my space and energy.
So what I'm getting is a pattern of learning to say no. Keeping that no standing your ground and taking care of yourself. Like putting yourself first before you're able to help others and do other things. Okay. Very important, guys. Take care of yourselves. And in my family, I feel like I notice that sometimes people forget to put themselves first before helping others. So, definitely. It definitely is a cultural thing.
Use the word guilt trip. We always joke, oh, don't lay that air of guilt on me. But it is a cultural thing, at least in our family, is you serve people first. It's a very big serving culture, which is hard. So when you have these cultural things outside of being human, I'm kind of the pariah in my family because I say no to events, or I say no to things, because I'm like, I can't do that, I can't afford that. You know, and my mom's like, but that's your cousin. And I'm like, I have like 100 cousins. Like, come on, you know? So that's another thing to think about is culturally, it is kind of a thing where you have to find those boundaries.
I think gender also has, like, we are taught, there's also Mexican guilt, of course, yes. I imagine, like, also, oh! In the Mexican culture, there is a lot of guilt too. And you're supposed to be, the cornerstone for your family, right? And I think it's learning to step aside also from the cultural stuff that doesn't give you well-being, right? And the other part is gender. We are taught historically, your lineage tells you like that you're a woman and you're supposed to be nourishing to everybody that comes in, right? Like I would tell my patients that they have to stop being the big boob for everybody, right? That wants to give nourish to every single person that comes to your life, right? And I think that has a lot to do because we're brought up to believe that if you don't nourish in that way, in that cultural way, then you're not a good woman, right? Whatever that means. I haven't found still the real meaning of being a good woman. If somebody knows it, please let me know. Because in 50 years, I haven't found it. So.
Found another microphone. You saw a magic trick? The microphone appeared. But it definitely is a cultural thing. And we even have a saying in Mexico that like a woman is prettier the more quiet she is. So saying no is like, she said no. Oh my God. Depends on the culture and the person, especially with elders as well. But women are always like, yes. You say yes, you treat your elders, you say yes to everyone, to the man. Put the man first, put your elders first. Everyone but yourself first. So it's really good to see examples of women who have been able to move past that and say no. For the final question for you guys, have you ever felt pressure to code switch in a professional environment? And for those of you who don't know what code switching is when a person of color will change their ways of talking, their ways of dressing, just their whole way of presenting themselves to appear more white in order to be more accepted by others, or maybe it'll make things easier. But it is a very harmful process, I'd say, because it's very easy to lose yourself. So it's kind of playing with fire if you don't know, like if you try it and then you lose yourself in the process. So, open the floor to you.
I actually have the opposite code switching experience. In my family, going back to, from what I understand, my grandparents' were enslaved on my mother's side in Petersburg, Virginia. I know nothing about my father's side. But my grandparents, by the time I was born, in my family, we spoke what was then called standard English. That was it. Nothing else was accepted, nothing else was allowed. If we said ain't, we got in trouble. So the way I speak now is the way everyone in my family, even my grandparents who were raised in Virginia, and they got this from their parents and their grandparents. So my grandfather would always talk to us about the King's English. That tells you something. He was born in 1905, and he would always talk to us about speaking the King's English, which then became called standard English. I don't know what the hell it's called now, but anyway, basically when I'm in primarily African American settings, and particularly when I was growing up in school, I was always teased because I talk white. I was bullied because I talk white. And I just couldn't make that switch to what people accepted then. I mean, they called all kinds of things, bad English, Ebonics. Now it's African American Vernacular English, AAVE. That it just isn't part of my schema. And standard English was drilled so hard in us, and I'm not complaining about it. In fact, I'm kind of glad, but it was drilled so hard in us. There is no other way that I can naturally speak. This is it. However, there are some times when I kind of drifted to a little less formal way of speaking. I was a counselor here for 11 years. And I've done counseling, teaching, and training my entire career. So there are times when I tell people, okay, I'm taking off the professional hat now, and this is just Teresa talking. So when I get to that, this is just Teresa talking, then the phrases that I use, maybe the tone of my voice is a little less formal, but it's always still in that standard English range. So for me, the code switching doesn't necessarily occur when I'm in professional settings. There's a tiny bit of code switching that I almost force myself into when I'm around my own people. And it's painful because I remember what people would say to me when I open my mouth. My own people would say to me when I open my mouth. And that I was not accepted, not believed, not brought in, because I didn't sound like everybody else. So like you say, so my situation is the opposite. So in professional settings, I sound like an average white person for the most part, which is always fun because when people get me on the phone, they didn't know who they were talking to. Then I show up and I didn't know you. Yeah, well, I am. And here we go. So just like I say, just getting that whatever speech patterns, whatever language, whatever way of dressing, whatever way of presenting yourself, that is given to you and reinforced in you within your own family setting, that's what you present to the world. And sometimes the world isn't ready for what you have, or some parts of the world aren't ready for what you have. But still, my thing is, okay, whose problem is that? So I finally kind of realized that, if I still have problems in Black groups, and I still have problems in Black groups, as soon as I start talking, and I thought, what am I supposed to do? What do you want me to do? So you can either listen to me, hear what I have to say, judge it for what it is, or I got other stuff to do. So it's been, like I say, it's been a bit of a struggle. But I think just in terms of, since this is a dominant culture country at this point, it's changing quickly, I'm ready, that the fact that I can get into that dominant culture frame, just because of the fact that I talk like dominant culture does, that has made my life professionally somewhat easier. They still get crazy when they see who they're talking to, but in terms of my getting in the door, I've been able to get in the door because I don't have to go through the whole code switching thing. And it's one of those things that I struggle with constantly, and it's a sort of battle in my head. But so I guess there's no question I really have to think about. But there's two sides to that coin, and sometimes to this day I'm still trying to figure it out. But that's it. I'll be all right. Don't worry.
For me, I think yes, definitely. I've always felt the pressure since I was born. I was born in a Mexican, very traditional. I always tell people that I was born in a Victorian era. That's how my family was and how traditional they were. And then I'm 50 years old. We're going back to the 80s, right? In the 80s, a Mexican woman wasn't allowed to go out alone. You weren't supposed to live alone. Oh, God forbid you had your own apartment. You were kind of the hoochie of the whole family if you lived alone, even if you didn't do anything. I went out and I pursued a career, and I didn't get married. And so there was always all this pressure to comply to what the system said. And remember, when we're talking about code switching, we have different areas, right? There's the pressure of your family to belong there, and there's all these rules of how, example what Dr. Jones was saying, right? These are the rules of your family, and so for you to belong, you have to do this, and this, right? And these are the rules from your school, and this, and this. And so as we move forward, there's a lot of areas that have their own rules where you have to code switch to belong. And so for me, my family had its own sets. Like women, like Angie was saying, in a Mexican traditional family, we have the saying, calladita te ves más bonita. So women that don't speak, they're beautiful, right? Or we have another one that's mujer letrada, mujer quedada. A woman that studies will never marry, right? And so, since I was little, and also I was born to a family where there were no women, only my aunts, right? But I had like 20 cousins. So for me to be me, I had to fight. I had to fight my family, I had to fight my cousins. I ended up beating all of them, so I can throw a punch at my 50s that you wouldn't believe. And so, I don't know, when I was in my 20s, I kind of promised myself that regardless of, I'm always going to be myself. And if you love me, like me, whatever, the door's open. If you don't, the door's really wide, and you can go ahead and cross over, right? It's difficult. It's not a path that is simple, or I can tell you, oh yes, you just decide to be you and everything will be unicorns and whatever. No. It's a really hard path because you have to always be true to yourself and flip a lot of people, and they won't take it nicely, and they'll pressure you a lot, and you'll have to pay a consequence. Because even though that life is about choosing, even if you choose the right thing, you're always going to have to pay a consequence to it. And we're not told this. We're always told, like, well, if you choose the right path, then nothing will happen. That's bullshit. No, that won't happen. Even if you choose the right thing, it comes with a price. The difference for me was being miserable, right, or not. Being joyful or not. So I'm going to choose myself, to be myself, and I'm ready. I've been ready, and I've been paying the consequence of this since I was little, but I am happy. I have the people that I want to in my life, and for me that's wonderful. And I'm teaching my children to respect themselves as they see me walk in spaces and say, yeah, I'm unapologetically Mexican, I'm an apologetic woman, and if you have your own opinion, I really don't care. And if you want to be my friend, if you want to work with me, you want to do anything with me, you're very welcome. We'll do magic together. If you don't, the next one. And I've been really blessed with that because I've always had a lot of friends. I've always had what I wanted, but again, I've always been paying whatever. I know there's going to be a price, a consequence. I'm not going to be let into the club. You have to stop caring about that at one point or another and live your life and be true to yourself. For me, that's my experience, right?
So yeah, I think for me, those two responses are brimming of confidence and understanding that it's easier as you get older to sit in yourself, and you know, kind of what Dr. Jen said, like, well, I don't care if I show up, if they like me, they don't, you know, kind of thing. You know, it's a journey. I am still on that journey. I'm not quite there. I'm getting there. But I've actually code switched so much that I've called myself a chameleon. I grew up, my grandparents fled Palestine in 1948, and then first Nakba, and they moved to the U.S., where they did what they could to be white. And to the point where I actually didn't learn I was Palestinian until I was 27, because my grandmother kept it from me. She tried to say we were Italian, but we had Arab food. There was not one piece of pasta. It was a lot of Arabic being spoken, so she lied and said that I was Lebanese. And then I found out later. And so my family lived outside of Philadelphia, and it's very segregated. So there was the white neighborhood, and then the black neighborhood, the white school and the black school. And my dad's white, and my mom is very, very, very Palestinian, very, very brown lady. And I was a very dark kid. I've lightened up as I've gotten older, which has been a weird journey, because as a kid I was teased very much for my dark skin, my frizzy hair, because my family put us in the white neighborhood and in the white school. And I was one of 3 people of color. And so it was very hard for me not being around other Arabs and other Palestinians. And for those of you who don't know, Arab is kind of the general term. There's 22 Arabic countries, 22 Arab countries, Palestinian is one. So it was really hard because the other people I were around were, my best friend was Puerto Rican, and my other best friend was a black girl. And so when I was in high school, it was really hard. I ended up getting a boyfriend in the black school. And so I was like, cool, I'm gonna be around other people of color, this is gonna be great. No, because I was the white girl there when I would go to sporting events or any of their events. And so for me, I've had to learn to meld into the culture where I was. And so when I went to my Puerto Rican friend's family house, I was Puerto Rican. When I went to my boyfriend's house, I was black. When I went to my family's house, I was switching between white and Arab. And so for me, it's hard because I've never been able to truly, besides the last a couple of years, find other Palestinians and other Arabs to kind of connect with and feel like myself. But even there I don't, because I was raised white. I was raised to not know my culture. So I feel very imposter there because I don't know Arabic. I don't know a lot of the Palestinian culture. I've only been learning it over the last 15 years. So for me, there's not only that, kind of what Gabby says, culturally, but also with work and being in different spaces. So when I have a male client, I talk to the male client differently than I talk to a female client. When I'm in a networking event versus a networking event during the day versus a networking event during the night, like a cocktail hour. So for me, it's exhausting. That's also why I have very strict boundaries on my non-peopling, because I find myself constantly having to switch throughout the day depending on where I am. And I hope to get to a point where I don't do that, and I feel comfortable enough in myself to not do that. But all honesty, I'm not quite there yet. I did just hit 40, and I hear after 40 you start really, they call it the F at 40s. So I'm really kind of hoping that starts to settle in within the next couple of years. Because it's exhausting, but the lesson I am learning is, again, like these wonderful women have said, inspired me today, is just stand in who you are, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And that it is a journey to get there. You're not just gonna wake up one day. I actually had that confidence in my 20s and in college, and then for some reason, between 30 and 40, I felt like a teenager again, like, oh my gosh, my body's changing, things are being weird again, so just understand it's a journey, and, to get to these places is a blessing, where you're confident in yourself, where you can just be who you are.
Thank you, Christina. I remember I used to be brown too when I lived in California. There's no sun here, so I look really pale. Does anyone else get really pale in the winter here? I get really sad. People ask me if I was sick like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, no. I just got pale now. It was kind of mean. But I appreciate each of your answers. Thank you so much for being here. And can we get another round of applause for our wonderful guest speakers? We all hope to achieve your levels of maturity and not giving crap about anything. Looks wonderful. We're excited to reach that. We would also like to open the floor for any questions from the audience. I do recommend you take this opportunity because it's rare you get 3 amazing women here sitting, willing to answer questions and give advice. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah? Let me reach you 1 second.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Lynn Mamag, and I wanted to ask, how do you, internally and externally, how do you react to when somebody assumes your ability based on specifically race?
Okay. And as Whitney was saying, that all of the things that we're talking about are a journey and a process. It starts from wanting to punch people in the face when I was in my 20s, to now, there was a point maybe when I was middle-aged when I would want to engage people in conversation about where their misperceptions and their biases and all the stuff is coming from. And then after hearing a bunch of bullshit stories, and I realized I don't care where it's coming from, so I'm not going to ask you. But I think, and there's also a piece of me that has gotten so used to it that it almost doesn't bother me anymore. So I think that some of those responses may be a little bit contradictory, but again, that's part of this arc that I've gone through. From my very first experience of having someone react to me badly because I was black was when I was in the first grade. I remember like it was yesterday. I was 6. That was my teacher. So when it starts out at that age, and I came home to ask my parents what just happened here, and they're explaining to me what just happened, and not like we hadn't had the conversation before, but now I saw it and felt it, and I didn't like it, I didn't want to go to school the next day, because of what happened. So from there, again, going through this, explaining myself to other people, and now deciding, I'm not explaining anything to you, go look it up. It's out there. It's, I grew up with a encyclopedia. You gotta Google. It's easier. Go find out. And that sense that what am I going to take on? Whose responsibility is it? So it's not that things don't still hurt, or I don't still get really angry, when those things happen, when people expect that I'm unable or incapable or less than because, my packaging is African American. Or when I get the I'm so exceptional. Oh my God, you're not like other black people I've known. What am I supposed to do with that? So again, that's one of those moments when I would love to punch him in the throat, but I just, but some of this, you have to just take these things on, which is why we get tired, and fed up, and, where we just don't want to deal with people anymore because we know something dumb is going to happen any moment. So, like I said, all of that is to answer your question, and if all that made sense, so there is that the internal piece that I said that still has the reactions, but I learned over time that, that's your problem. Go figure it out over there. Just get away from me. Yeah. You want to try that?
I think it's about, like everybody's saying, I do want to reiterate that part. Like, you see us sitting down, but we're women that we went through a whole process of inner work. I think now there's a lot of stuff going on that tells people that helps people be confused about psychological needs and accomplishments. So for us to kind of be able to be within this process, it was getting to listen to ourselves and those psychological needs that brought us to where we are at this moment. And I think part of that process is also, for me, is kind of separating the pendejos. That's how we call them in Mexico, right? Imbeciles. Where do I want to put my energy in? Do I want to put my energy in this pendejo and explain how worthy I am and demonstrate how good I am? Like maybe in my 20s, I would demonstrate to men that I was really intellectual, and then I would go ahead and rip their brain apart, and that was fun, right? As a woman, that's something I did a lot. Like, oh yeah, you're a pendejo. Let me bring you down with it, right? And I was a philosophy teacher for many years, so I know how to do that, right? But then I got tired of it, and then I gained consciousness that I was still trying to prove something, right? And that I was still giving that energy to that person. So understanding that I have the power to give that energy to somebody or not, I think that's been a lifesaver, especially for moving here. Because my experience in California, we're majority down there. I have found more people down here that are more, let's say, not accustomed to us. and they don't read a lot, so they don't know we've been around in the country for many years, right, before them. So, I guess just knowing that, and now, again, the same two rules. I have fun with it, and I'm really sophistical, and so when I get those like, oh, you're very well articulated for being Mexican and being your thing, oh, I have fun with it. I'm like, oh, really, right? And so I decide, do I want to talk to this idiot? Do I want to explain myself? Like, what do I want to do? What am I in the mood of? Or do I want to have fun with it? And then I have fun, right? But I've been doing that because I'm a woman all my life. And the other part, I guess, would be just choosing. Like, what are your, like, how do you feel today? Like, do you want to do that? Do you want to demonstrate anything? Or just letting it go? Because that's part of controlling your reactions, right? Do you want to put energy into reacting to this person? Or just kind of, yeah, well articulated. I took English in school, right? I don't know. So, that would be my answer.
Yeah, I think this can be in a bunch of different contexts, right? In the professional world, it's harder when you're judged based on race and your competence versus, you know, in like the social world or other worlds. But for me, kind of along the lines of what Gabriela was saying, there's this kind of awe-inspiring thing of people of color, right? So for me, like, it was always like, ooh, or are you Princess Jasmine, or you look exotic, or, you know, those kinds of things. And so I actually kind of used the pendejo-ness of people, like, okay, you're gonna be a dummy about this, let me use you for that, right? So it's kind of like a Robin Hood mentality of like, take from the dumb white people and give to everybody else. And so for me, I would use it to my advantage, right? So if people were going to do that, then why not? You know, if there's different like funding sources, or if there's different programs, or if there's different things, if they want to do that, if they want to act like that, then take them for all they're worth, in my opinion, and use it for good, obviously. But for me, it was, I think, I've only really experienced kind of racial stuff and situations after 9/11 happened. Because again, you know, the Arab population were targeted. Throughout my life, you know, we're kind of lumped in. In fact, we don't even have our own category on the census. We've been fighting. It was supposed to be in 2024 to have a Middle Eastern category. But we, you know, I'm always putting other. And so that othering is an awful feeling as well. But it's one of those things where, okay, if the world wants to be dumb about race, you know, use it, in my opinion. And so again, that's probably more of an immature answer rather than kind of let things go. But I am very much still that fiery person where I will engage and lay people out with their ignorance. However, I'm learning with the new divisions and the super idiots, the super pendejos that are coming out, I don't engage. There are certain people where I can tell where, okay, this could be an engaging conversation where I can teach you something. But if I don't feel like there's going to be an exchange, then like Dr. Jones said, I kind of just don't put my energy in.
Don't waste your time talking to a wall, basically, you know? It's like talking to a wall, guys. You're gonna get nowhere. Any other questions for our speakers today? No questions? Do they really not inspire any thought in you guys? You guys don't have any identity crisis after listening to these people?
With like representation in professionally or otherwise.
I can guess the answer to this one. Are you gonna tell?
Sometimes. that can be one thing.
That's
And I think the other is figure out what you don't know. Figure out what you're unsure about. Figure out what biases you hold. Figure out what your circle looks like, your circle of friends and family. Because if your friends and family circle pretty much all looks like you, which is fine, but that also means you're missing out on a lot. So I think you start off with examining your own life and see, who would you come in contact with? Who do you want to come in contact with? Who would you like to avoid? And that's legitimate, because trust me, all my friends are Black, just because personalities and other things just don't match up. But I think the start is, what does your life look like? And within that examination of some things that you've been curious about, things that you don't know, things you feel that you ought to know. Someone, if you're watching something on TV or hearing of someone talking, you think, holy crap, I didn't know that. Go find out about it. And I think there's still this tendency for folks who are not people of color to still look to us to explain everything and to talk about history and that kind of stuff. A lot of us are not doing that anymore. Not our job. It wasn't our job in the first place, but we took it on. We're done. And the information's out there. So there's all kinds of books and stuff, that are available. And sometimes people don't take that as seriously as they can. Read stuff. There's so many cool books out there. They're wonderful. One that I think everybody should read, I don't care what color skin you are, it is Black AF History. Black as fuck history. It is the best book about United States history that I've ever read. It is historically completely accurate, but the author has a way of describing it and talking about it in this sort of snarky, sarcastic way that is absolutely beautiful. It's one of the best books I've ever read. I'm getting ready to read it again. So it's around everywhere. But I think just that sense of understanding, this country's history and where people fall and how this all has come to the way it looks today, because today is not an anomaly. This is not special. This has been coming. This has always existed. It's just that there's more ways for it to be louder now and stupider now. But this is the United States from start to now. Nothing different. But people say, oh my God, no, but that means that you don't know. So like I say, so just kind of think about what you want to know. What groups of people are out there that you want to know something about in terms of history and culture and those kinds of things. And and do that examination and that study. And spend legitimate, sincere, genuine time around people that aren't like you. And and if you are genuine and sincere, if you have questions, those will also be genuine and sincere, and people will answer. If you come in like a bull in a china shop, you're gonna get thrown out. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
Same as Dr. Jones, read. The information's there. We're from a generation that we had to go and look for information, encyclopedia, meeting during your life journey, people that were inspiring, but you have to look for them. Now we have all this type of panels, and you have Google, that I don't like them because they said the Gulf of Mexico, not the Gulf of America, but anyways. But there's a lot of information out there that you can look for it. Something else I would always encourage, another book, but this is for men, it's the Peter Pan syndrome. And that's really good to kind of understanding how, right? And the other thing I would say, start with simple things. Like, when I got married, I would tell my husband, like, I never stay when somebody's saying a joke about women, I leave. I've never stood there, right? And he kind of understood my point of view, but he didn't comprehend it from over here, right? After we had our daughter, oh my God, that was a game changer. Now he understood by the heart. And I've been married 23 years to that man, and he doesn't stay in a joke about women, because that is horrible towards women, especially if you're in a group of men that they kind of bully and and you go away. I think that's a way of contributing, not participating in nonsense. And just holding ground for women, like Angie was saying, right? Holding space, being quiet, because we don't get to talk a lot. We're not giving those spaces. And for girls, I would just say, be loud. Be loud as you can. Loud, clear always. And you don't look prettier if you shut up. You only will end up miserable, catering to other people's need and losing yourself. So for women, it's always be loud. Make yourself be listened. Pay the price. It's really worth to pay the price, because I am not being quiet. Shut up now, I won't, right? So that would be for you.
Yeah, so I took a Women in Gender Studies certification course, which, what does that even mean? But I had a white male in our class, and he kind of jumped through all these different classes with me, and he would always ask the same question. One of the big things, I would take what kind of Gabriela said a step further, is any sort of joke that's not appropriate, whether it's against women or people of color or whatever, don't just walk away, stand up, say something. You plant seeds when you say something, even if it's just you and a friend and no one else is around. That's true activism and allyship of really standing up for people. There, in the humanitarian sector, there's something called the accompaniment model, and it basically talks about accompanying those that are, whether they're in need or underserved, or, in the humanitarian sector, it's focused on refugees. But the idea is you accompany that person and you listen to what they need and what they are going to ask you for. So, if we're at some sort of, if you're at some sort of thing and you're with someone of color or a woman, and something happens and you don't really know what to do, or, what do you need right now? What can I do for you? And that, I think a lot of mistakes that white allies make is they try to forge the way with their own white views of things, right? So yes, like Dr. Jones said, we're not here to necessarily constantly teach, but if you ask the question, hey, what can I do in this situation? Or if a situation passed, what can I do next time in the next situation? And get yourself educated, not only by reading, but through the people that are affected. How did that make you feel? One of the biggest things that I've experienced, a white male actually stood up for me at work once, where we were in a meeting, and some guy, older, in a higher position, was talking, yelling at me for no reason. And the guy right next to me is like, "Hey man, would you be yelling at me if I did the thing wrong?" And just completely just stopped everything, right? And one of the things I learned in this women and gender studies course is, white males can help change a lot of shit, because you guys are in there, right? You're at that top echelon of the food chain. So you have a lot of power to make changes, and getting in there and using your voice and advocating, but advocating with the understanding from the viewpoint of the people you're advocating for, and not what you think that they need, kind of thing. So, yes, giving space, but asking the questions. Hey, what could I have done there? What can I do? How can I help? But coming from an education standpoint too, not just like teach me all the history and why I need to do that. So.
One other thing, there's a phrase that I used to use around here when I was working at OC, because there was all kinds of things that went wrong here, and we were trying to fix so many things, and they were, it was ridiculous. But my thing was, I said, all right, for that particular event or whatever problem, my thing was sometimes it takes a white guy. And that's not a space for everybody to listen to me, or listen to my friend here who is Mexican, or listen to that person over there because female. Sometimes it takes a white guy. So I think going along with what Whitney says, there are definitely times when we not only want you to kind of get in there, but we really need you. And we need you to be the voice to other white guys. They're not going to listen to us. They're not. And quite frankly, I don't want to talk to them. So I think there are those moments where, sometimes it takes a white female, sometimes it takes a white guy. So don't be afraid to do that. And thank you for asking that question. Sometimes the question annoys me, but again, that's me. I gotta calm it down, Teresa. But I also appreciate when people are brave enough, quite frankly, and concerned enough to ask the question. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you all very much for coming. And before we head out, one last round of applause, please, for the amazing women who took the time to come here with us today. And I appreciate each and every one of you, and remember that you all have the power to bring change. It's important to read. Please read, like Dr. Teresa Jones said. Books are amazing, and Google is free. So, I would like to invite you all to get something else that's free. Food! We have free food outside for everyone who came here today. Free Mexican food. So please stop by, grab a plate for yourself, for your family, and take it with you home. Again, thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.